Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe today, and I am very excited. Today we're going to be going through a list of some actors and actresses who have played roles in the Marvel movies before, and kind of talk about if they could come back and what characters I feel like they should play. This video is going to be mostly like speculative. Like, I feel like a lot of these actors are probably too busy for Marvel roles. I don't know if some of them would even really come back for Marvel roles, and then for some of them they're also just like doing other things that just kind of makes it where they'd probably be unavailable for this. But because RDJ returns to the MCU and he's going to be playing Doctor Doom, I figured I should talk about kind of like recasting for specific characters. So that being said, I have one big one that I'm really excited to talk about, and originally this video was actually just going to be me talking about that one, and it was going to be like the one actor I would want to return to the MCU. But I was looking at some of the actors and actresses who've been in the MCU, and I was like, you know what, some of these people actually definitely should have played different roles or maybe been a bigger part. So I'm just going to go through character by character and say all of the different actors that I feel like could potentially return and what I think a good role for them to return to would be. Alrighty, so the first one I want to talk about, this one is mostly a joke, but I just think it would be hilarious if he's played 3 different Marvel characters. But I'm talking about the man, the myth, the legend, Aaron Taylor Johnson. I absolutely love him. I think that he's so good and everything he is in. I think that his performance as Quicksilver was relatively solid. Obviously, a lot of people preferred the Evan Peters version, but I feel like this version was also very enjoyable. But that being said, if he was to come back, I feel like he could come back in the Mutant Saga and he could play like Quasar or one of those cool mutants that are like very macho manly. He is so jacked right now. Like, he is insanely strong. And considering like he's going to be playing Kraven and stuff like that, I feel like him showing up in kind of like the Savage Lands and being one of those characters would be pretty interesting. Do I think it would happen? Absolutely not. But do I think it would be hilarious if it did? Absolutely. This next one's a little bit weird because he technically hasn't like actually like appeared in the MCU because he's just a voice actor, but Jeffrey Wright, he voices the Watcher in What If. He's absolutely incredible. I love his vocal work and everything that he does with that. And I'm definitely like, if we see a live action version of the Watcher and it's not like played by Jeffrey Wright and it's not somewhat modeled after Jeffrey Wright, I'm going to be really upset. But that being said, if Jeffrey Wright was to show up and he was to show up in the form of a different character in the MCU, I low-key think he would be incredible as the Beyonder. I don't know if they're going to go through with that storyline whenever they do Secret Wars, but if they did, I think that Jeffrey Wright would be an incredible actor for that role. This next one, I don't think the actor would come back, and then also the character that I would want him to play is a character that's already existed in the MCU, but they just did the character so poorly that I'm like, why would they do this to us? But my thought process is Mads Mikkelsen, the man the myth, the legend, who plays Caecilius in the original Doctor Strange movie. He is such a talented actor, and he honestly would have been incredible for Doctor Doom, but they decided that that's not the route they're going with. But a character I think he would absolutely nail if they made a more comic accurate version of Malekith. And for some of you guys who might not know who Malekith is, that's the main villain from Thor: The Dark World, the like dark elf. I feel like that entire movie, they did not really get the entire spirits of those characters right. And I feel like Malekith is like a much more interesting villain if you look at the comics. And for some reason, they're like, let's take this colorful comic villain who's really interesting and actually has some cool like mythology to him, and let's just make his whole deal that he likes darkness. And that was really weird and really lame. But if they made a more comic accurate version of the Dark Elves and they were to bring back Malekith for any reason in the future, Mads Mikkelsen would absolutely devour that role. Okay, and then this next one, this is going to be a little different. I'm going to say the character first because I have 2 separate actors who I think could play the character. And both of them are kind of like, I don't necessarily think that they would be the perfect choice for it. But if we're doing specifically somebody who's acted in Marvel projects before to play these roles, I think that both of them could do it. But we're going to be talking about the character, the irredeemable Ant-Man. This is a character I don't think they'll ever do in the MCU just because it's like attached to Disney and he's a very terrible character. And I feel like for him to work best, you probably would have to make him in rated R. And then I think another thing is they probably would not take the character seriously and they wouldn't kind of go into some of the like things that really makes this guy have all the issues and stuff that he has. But for people who do not know, the irredeemable Ant-Man, he's essentially just a regular Joe Schmo, just a average dude who somehow gets an Ant-Man suit, and then he goes around and does exactly what normal people would do if they randomly got the powers to shrink. He'll like rob banks, he'll go to casinos and like cheat at like some of the like roulette things. He spied on Captain Marvel showering. That was a really weird one. That was not one that necessarily needed to show up, but he just does a bunch of like really like sketchy things things that somebody would do if they got the powers to shrink. And overall, he's just kind of like a scumbag. And I think that he's a fun character. And like I said, I would love it if he could show up in the MCU. I don't think they would do it. But overall, I think that he'd be fun. And the two actors who I think could potentially play him, Josh Segarra, who, if you guys hear that name and you're like, who is that? He plays Pug in She-Hulk. And it's like one of the most like side characters that like nobody would even notice that this actor has been in the MCU if he was to show up in this role. And he's a really solid actor in all the other things I've seen him in. I've really liked him. And I think that overall he would be fun in this role. I think that he would have an absolute blast with it. And then the other one, Bradley Cooper. I don't think Bradley Cooper would do it because after last year with Maestro and all the interviews and stuff he did for that, he's made it seem like he only wants to do like 3 more films in his career and he wants them to all be prestigious ones. So I don't know if he would come back for that, but it'd be interesting if he would. Okay, and then the second to last one, the last one is the one that I'm really excited about, but this one I think is really interesting. Jenna Ortega has been in the MCU technically because she was in Iron Man 2. I believe at this like Tony Stark Expo or whatever. She was like a little girl who just ended up being in the crowd. And I think it'd be really interesting if she was to show up in the MCU and if she was to play Black Cat. I know a lot of people want that to be like Sydney Sweeney, and a lot of people are like, oh my god, it needs to be like Sydney Sweeney because like, you know, she's so attractive or whatever. I honestly don't know why people fan cast Sydney Sweeney for this role. Like, I don't get it. I've never seen a Sydney Sweeney like movie and not, okay, yeah, she makes sense for Black Cat. That being said, Jenna Ortega is constantly in roles where she's having to like seduce the people she's acting against, and she's very like manipulative and stuff like that. And I'm like, she literally gives off like the perfect vibes to play Black Cat. I think that Jenna Ortega would be incredible in this role because like movies like Miller's Girl, which came out this year, where she's like manipulating her like teacher into like doing things with her, and she's just like so seductive, and she has that like voice where she's just like, oh come on, shouldn't we do this? And it's like, oh, her as Black Cat would be so good. And for some reason, everyone's fan casting Sydney Sweeney always. And I'm like, why though? I don't know. Just doesn't make sense to me. But all that being said, the last one I want to talk about, he's not even an MCU actor. He's just acted in a different Marvel series. And I think that he should literally return as the character he's playing, just as like an evolvement of said character. It's Miles Teller. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who probably said this exact thing I'm about to say, but there is a variant of Reed Richards in the comics. I believe it's the Ultimates universe, where he kind of becomes a villain. He has a lot of like mental trauma and he has a bunch of issues, and he ends up kind of spiraling out of control, and he becomes a villain because he's super smart, and he kind of starts using his powers for negative things, and he stretches his mind a little bit too far, and he ends up losing his universe. I believe this is around one of the Secret Wars timelines. And he starts going from like Earth to Earth and doing just a bunch of like tragic, terrible things, kind of trying to do whatever he can to like bring his own Earth back, that he doesn't care about the Earths that he's destroying in the process. And he's a really sick and twisted villain. And I feel like Miles Teller would 100% eat that up. I feel like Miles Teller is an incredible actor. In fact, pretty much all of the actors who they had in the Josh Trank's Fan Four Stick were great. So if he was to return and he was to have a big role as, you know, the Maker, it'd be really cool. I do think Marvel's kind of at the point where they're just wanting to like hurry up and get all their multiverse stuff done. So more than likely there won't be any room to include this version of his character. But that being said, if they do a Council of Reeds, he better show up in it. During Secret Wars, if they end up doing like the full-on, here's a team of superheroes and here's a team of villains, I hope he's one of the villains and he could maybe have like an arc where he turns into a good guy. But overall, I just think it's a really cool character, and I think it's somebody who is really interesting, and I feel like Miles Teller can do that complexity incredibly well. And I feel like if you literally take his performance from Whiplash, combine it with his role as Mr. Fantastic, where he's trying to play a genius, they would just blend perfectly into this evil version of this character who strives too much for perfection and kind of like ruins his own opportunities over and over again and sabotages and just becomes ridiculously evil. But that being said, that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. I love and appreciate you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bow.